Good evening. We'd like to call this regularly scheduled meeting of the Marquette Township Board to order for Tuesday, March 18th, 2014, and ask you all to please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Clerk Rattari, roll call, please.
Trustee Pompo is excused tonight. Trustee LaRue.
Here.
Trustee Durant.
Here.
Trustee Trescott.
Here.
Treasurer Johnson.
Here.
Clerk Rattari is here, and Supervisor Limata.
Here.
Staff present is Manager Gerard, Superintendent Kirk Page, Planner McCarthy. Committee members present are John Marks, Mike Springer, and Dave Wiegand.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is approval of the consent agenda. As you know, those items on the consent agenda typically do not require immediate board action. This evening includes approval of the prior meeting minutes from March 4th, committee reports from the Recreation Committee, the agenda from March 18th, and the draft minutes from March 11th, February 3rd, report from the Road Committee, including the agenda from March 19th, Road Committee minutes of February 4th, and draft minutes of the March 4th, 2014 meetings. Planning Commission report, Diagonal Heritage Recreation Authority report from the liaison from minutes from January 23rd and their agenda for February 26th. Fire Department activity from February of 2014. The Sheriff's Department report of February. Water production report of February. The Peter White Public Library Advisory Council minutes of December 4th. Bills payable in the amount of $379,628.87 and the January 2014 financial statements. Any member of the board wishing to remove any of the items from the consent agenda for further discussion?
Well, I'll just have a question and a board comment on it, that's all.
Okay.
I won't remove it.
I'll make a motion we approve the consent agenda.
Support.
We have motion and support to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion passes. Consent agenda is approved. Thank you. The next item is the approval of the remainder of the agenda. Are there any board members wishing to make changes or additions to the agenda as presented? Seeing none?
I'll make a motion we approve the agenda.
Support.
We have motion and support to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes. The agenda is approved. This will bring us up to public comment. Those members of the public wishing to make comment may do so at this time. Please approach the podium. First, last name, and address.
Mike Springer, 206 Eagles Nest Road. Mr. Wiegand and myself are going to be talking about, we would like to comment during a new business 11F, and that would include number 1 and number 2. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jim Clark, Manager, Cornerstone Development, 1910 Industrial Parkway, Marquette. Just need to reserve time for items 11A and 11C, and I have Bromley Hall from Tom Hall Contracting here with me as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Anyone else? Seeing none, I will close public comment, move to board member comment. Those members of the board wishing to address the public may do so at this time. Peter?
Last meeting, I mentioned about people to take a little interest in the fire hydrants. And one person took me to task on it. He said he got his plow out and he cleaned around the fire hydrant. So I guess I have to thank Reggie from the Cedar Motel. He said, made sure I knew about it, that he cleaned out around the fire. And if we all take just a little extra time sometime, it helps, because our department don't have the time to go clean all of them out, even though we'd like to see them all cleaned out. But if you live close to one, just go out and take a second and clean it out. It'll make a lot of difference if you have to use that hydrant. So, the second thing I had is Tom Casperson was up at Westwood School the other day talking to students about getting active and stuff like that, and let people know how everyone is doing. And I know we've talked about it for how many years now that I've been here, getting the people involved, and it's hard to get them to come and let us know what they're thinking, But I was at a road commission last night, and people who didn't like what was going on, they're there, so apparently, like we said last time, I guess we're doing something all right, but it's nice to know that we're doing it all right, but, let us know, and I'm glad he's starting at a young age to get these kids involved in it, so, that's good, that's all.
Thanks, Pete. Lynn?
Planning update from last week. Typing it up, I usually like to say it verbally so everybody can hear it, not that it's all astounding, but one of our agenda items was discussion about the MNRTF grant applications, of which we'll hear some follow-up tonight. We did have some residents come in and voice their support, which was great to have some public. We talked at length about the zoning text amendments to the map, the zoning map, which involves, as you know, the forest recreation now, not forest preserve, and scenic residential. Too many names. So we had quite a bit of discussion on that, whether we felt good or not about
Turn your microphone on.
I thought you hit it. I'm sorry. Thank you. Anyway, we had a lot of discussion about the two text amendments that we are kind of trying to finalize, which we think will pretty much be, we're good. I don't think we'll be making any more changes on them now. We did have an update to the Blue Heron Bluffs condominium site, which is on the north side of Pasola's property on the lake, and there's going to be rerouting the road in there. We took a little van last year, the Planning Commission, and did a little tour of the township, of all of our assets and some of the crooks and crannies in the subdivisions, places some of us hadn't seen before, and that was one of the areas we found was really tough to get into, and we knew that we had talked to the fire department, and they had some issues with trying to get in there too and getting in and out. So the Blue Heron Bluffs owners are going to expand that a little bit, make it easier and safer for everybody to get in and out of there. The Road Committee Township road study is going to come to us at this level, should be the April 1st meeting, so we can get a little bit of a priority on what needs to be done. Hopefully it's going to be prioritized. I think that's the intention, so we'll see that. And then the, I'm not sure if we'll talk tonight about the Recreation Authority feasibility study, but that was, we had quite a discussion on that, knowing that it would come to this body too, if not tonight, at least at our next meeting for discussion. So that's a wrap-up of the Planning Commission.
Thanks, Lynn. Diana?
Nothing at this time.
Treasurer Johnson?
Couple items. I attended the Marquette Township Business Association today, and that their biggest discussion was doing something on 41 corridor, beautifying it in some way or other, and they're trying to put together some kind of a plan. And once they do that, then they want to present it to the board and see what kind of support they can get from the board, both physical support and financial support. So they're looking towards the future, trying to do something on 41 to make it better looking when people come into the township. They're talking about possibly beginning with the two signs on 41, doing something around there with flowers and that. So they're working on that. So I expect probably within the next month and a half, we'll have something from them at this point in time. And that. So they're working on it. They're concerned also what's MDOT going to do on the 41 corridor. And I said, I don't have a lot of information. I'll tell you what I know. And there wasn't that it's 3 or 4 years down the road before they're going to be able to do anything there. But that was the gritch of the whole thing today on that end of it and that too. So the other one I have in going through the reports, one on the water, I started looking at that. Is there any way we know how much water we're using through the let run? Have we been able to make any determination there or that?
Kirk Page is in my button. Kirk Page is in the audience this evening, and he can give you an update on that. But we are tracking that. So we've been reporting regularly to the County Emergency Services Department, trying to get the governor to declare an emergency along with the other communities in the area. So we are tracking that, and yeah, he can give you that information.
Well, the reason I looked at it, because actually, according to the actual numbers, we're pumping more water than we have, and I'm just wondering how much of that is due to let run and that, because the due to let run is not going to generate any revenue for us.
No.
And that, it's going to be negative all the way down the line in that. So,
Well, and that, we are tracking that. If you remember back in 94, 95, and then again in 2007, I believe it was, we did get reimbursed for all of that loss, and that's what we're trying to do through FEMA as well as through the governor. So far, the governor has declined to declare a state of emergency for this area because it's not serious enough.
okay, that's the only thing I have.
Thanks, Ernie. Clerk Kutari, anything?
Yeah, I think the sound system upgrade's virtually complete. The last meeting I watched, last couple meetings with the new microphones, the sound quality is noticeably better. It's not cutting out. Just have to make sure board members remember to press the button. And it's a little bit light on the wireless microphone from the podium, but I'm going to work on trying to get that a little bit better. But for the most part, I think our sound issues are over. So I'm glad to report that.
Thank you. A couple things. One, as you know, we are still have run the ad, and we sent it out in an e-blast a couple different times. Extend the dates for, we have few committee openings. We've only had one, to my knowledge, applicant. That was back in December and again this week. But we're looking for to resurrect the beautification committee, and we're hoping that somebody who takes an interest, like Treasurer Johnson just spoke with the Marquette Township Business Association, looking at flower plantings and corridor improvements. The beautification committee can have a hand in all that if and when we can attract enough members to make it a viable option. We also have money set aside in the budget for the committee, should anyone desire to come forward and help make the township a better looking place to live, work, and play. Zoning Board of Appeals has an opening, as does the DDA. And we're hoping interested candidates will fill out an application. We intend to fill those positions in the next meeting or two, and it'd be good if we had some candidates to fill those positions before we start randomly just assigning people out of the directory of the township.
Can you tell the public maybe what the beautification committee is kind of obvious, but the other two, give them like a couple lines on what that involves?
Zoning Board of Appeals is really important quasi-judicial committee that really it's a relief valve for anybody who goes before the Planning Commission and is looking to do something and they're turned down by the Planning Commission. It's a relief valve for them to be able to petition to the Zoning Board of Appeals for relief from some of the zoning ordinances. It's really an important committee. In fact, one of the few that, like I said, has a quasi-judicial authority. It can't be overridden by the township board, for example, once they make a decision. So it's important, and candidates should be well aware that they come. But it's not something that's going to be a huge time commitment. After we cleaned up our zoning ordinances, you've noticed that the amount of times that our ZBA has had to come together has been greatly reduced because of the work of the Planning Commission and Planner McCarthy. But there's certainly, there's still going to be some every year, and it would be a great opportunity for somebody to come out and get involved. And then the Downtown Development Authority exists in the most immediate area here, and it has been dormant for a few years, but with everything that we have going on, it's time to resurrect the DDA and start to move it forward and look at some other opportunities that we have to improve the area out here where is really our business district. So please come out, and if you have any questions, contact us at the office. We'd be happy to walk you through it, provide copies of what it is you'd be jumping into, and be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I would just add that the button needs to be pushed. I would just add that the DDA meets quarterly. It's not a regular monthly meeting. It meets every quarter, unless we have projects to address. Neither the ZBA nor the DDA are tremendous time commitments.
The other thing I have is there's been a lot of rumors swirling around about Duke Life Point, possible relocation out to Marquette Township. I would be happy to address any of those rumors that you've heard if you want to ask me one-on-one. I can say that we have provided information to the site consultants for Duke Life Point, and we'll continue to provide information as they request it. We're so excited that in this area that Duke Life Point is willing to invest $290 million in infrastructure. It's about keeping healthcare close to home, quality healthcare close to home. There's a lot of areas across the country that are faced with seeing the loss of rural healthcare systems. It's great to have that kind of investment. It sends a strong message to other entrepreneurs and developers in this area that we're here, we're going to have quality healthcare, that even with the advent of the Affordable Care Act, that we intend to be here and be able to provide those things close to home. It's about keeping healthcare dollars here, which keeps jobs in our community. Whether they locate here or somewhere else in the region, we'd be happy to provide them with any resources that we can to make sure they stay here. That's how important it is to the community. Whether they are here, do we want to have them in Marquette Township? We'd love to have them out here. But if they locate in the city of Marquette, we're equally as happy just to have them make that investment in this community and welcome the opportunity to serve them in any way we can. Again, if there's rumors you're hearing, which there are, and I read some of them on the blogosphere, feel free to give me a call, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. But officially, yes, we have heard that there are sites identified in Marquette Township. We have provided them a great deal of information. We meet with them on a pretty regular basis, and we'll continue to keep those lines of communication open. With that, we'll close board member comment. There is no public hearing tonight or forum discussion. We'll move to unfinished business. 10A, consider the draft report from the Ad Hoc Rec Authority Exploratory Advisory Committee. At our last meeting 2 weeks ago, Planner McCarthy and Mike Springer had updated the board on the body of work that they had accomplished along with the other municipalities, the city of Marquette and Chocolate Township. I didn't realize that it didn't get out to all the board members. We had put it on the agenda this evening to be considered as a first read through this for the board to accept. I know that Trustee Durant has seen it as her role as a liaison with the Planning Commission. Clerk Rattari had a copy, and I've had mine for quite some time, but there are a few board members who didn't get it until just before the meeting, and so in all fairness, I want to make sure that their comfort level is here, that we could move forward with counting this as a first reading, and it would be back on our agenda in April for a second reading for our approval. But let me check the comfort level of Trustee LaRue and Treasurer Johnson and Trustee Truscott.
I really haven't had a chance to look at it. All information I have is what was been presented here, and that's it. So even on our first reading, I'm voting for something I haven't even looked at this point in time. I have really have no way to even comment on it one way or another in that. So I would be kind of on the negative side, voting for something I have not had an opportunity to read in that. So
I would like to kind of go over it too, because I haven't read it yet either.
Okay. Pete?
Well, after they explained a little bit to us last week, we could consider this as a first reading and read it, and then because you have another meeting on April 2nd, and then you have anything, send your questions in ahead of time, but also ask them at that meeting, and you'll be more familiar with it. So we could consider this as a first reading, unless somebody wants to add something, like Jason wants to add something, or,
Mike or Jason, do you have any concerns? I mean, do we have any timeframes, Crush, and do we have a public date chosen yet for when it would be distributed? If we don't do the first reading tonight and we push it back so that the first reading is going to actually take effect for the first meeting in April, second reading will be the second meeting in April, which with potential adoption then, from our standpoint, are you comfortable?
Yes, I mean, it was my understanding that the public meeting would happen, and then you'd have an opportunity to comment and consider whether you support it or not. But there's no time frame, and I would offer the the trustees the ability to review it.
Good. Any updates since 2 weeks ago when you gave us the preliminary report?
I had proposed to our township board and the Chocolate Township board if they were wanting to have the same kind of review, which is fairly intensive with the city commission, with Leah, who drafted the report. Chocolate Township says that they support the plan as is and do not see the need to have that happen. And depending upon your review of the document and what you think the results are and conclusions, you can forego that as well. I just wanted, out of fairness, I thought it was, equitable to offer you guys the opportunity to have that same kind of one-on-one with Leah and have a review of it. But if you're comfortable with the document after you read it, then we just move forward.
Thanks, Jason. Then my recommendation would be that we move it. Clerk Rattari?
I'll just do that.
Fantastic.
I'll make a motion that we put this back on the agenda as a first reading for the first, and under unfinished business for the first meeting in April.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second to move the Ad hoc Rec Authority Exploratory Advisory Committee draft report to the agenda of April 1st. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. I apologize to the board that they didn't, that not everybody received this prior to this meeting. The next item on our agenda is 11A, consider the progress building number 16 or Public Works building number 5. Both Jim and Bromley reserved time, so if they'd approach the podium.
Okay, just check and see if the microphone is on.
It's on, Jim. It just, you got to talk a little bit close to it.
Okay, thank you. All we're gonna do right now on 11A is discuss the progress building number 16 or Public Works building number 5. This building does include items for demolition, winter conditions, some site work, concrete flat work, which is the majority of the flooring, the carpentry work, thermal insulation, some metal doors materials, the entrance door materials, some non-structural metal framing, and then general conditions and fees. The total amount is $126,710 less the 5% retainage, which is $120,374.50, and then with the contract admin fee, the total is $126,393.23. I guess if you have any questions, either I or Bromley from Tom Hall Contracting can answer those for you.
Question on the progress billing for Jim?
Was that supposed to be in our packet? Was it supposed to be part of the, and did I miss it?
It's in there, yeah.
It is, hey. I don't know. What page is it on?
64, starts at 64.
Okay. I've got the resolution to transfer funds for the fire department. That's, I don't have it.
That's right before that one.
No, balance sheet.
Did you download that, or is it from what Andrew sent out, or did you download it?
Just sent.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm guessing that.
Okay, somehow I didn't get that then.
I have an extra copy if you need.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's possible that the machine didn't.
It wasn't there at the beginning of the week, it is there now.
Okay, I wasn't aware that she uploaded it late.
We will also, Bromley and I will also do a progress update on the entire project on item 11C, as well as discuss the design development revision at that time. Okay?
Lynn, I know it's hard for you to ask questions since you didn't look over it beforehand. Is there anybody else who has any questions or concerns about the progress billing number 5?
Dennis, excuse me, does this have anything to do with the extra?
No, that will be on item 11C.
Okay, that's totally separate from this one. Okay, this is pretty straightforward.
There's no other questions. I would entertain a motion to approve in the amount of $126,393.23.
So moved.
Motion support. If there's no other comment, all those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next item on our agenda is 11B. Consider budget amendment 2014-02. Clerk Rattari.
Okay, I'll get to it here in a second. Okay, present to the board Budget Amendment 2014-02. It's pretty straightforward. It was a result of our, basically our contract settlements. The highlight of this budget amendment is the authorization is requested to increase the fire marshal department by $5,900 for the payout of the compensatory time earned and available, and to adjust the sick time balance to 720 hours. The fund balance is the offset. And I make a motion to approve that. It'll be in the minutes as always.
I'll support.
Motion support. Any other comment?
Question I have, is this the only one here that we have to worry about, or is there more coming?
I,
There will be a couple more coming. Lois is doing the budget amendments for those now as they're occurring.
Okay.
It will be much smaller.
This was the largest one, correct?
Yes, this is the largest because of the amount of comp time it has.
It's as a result of the new contract. What we're paying out here is to balance it, the result of the new contract, because employees are now offered long-term disability. They only need to hold 90 days to cover their short-term disability, and anything after that will get picked up by the long-term disability plan, which covers all of our employees unless they're over 62, in which case we can't offer them. 65, sorry, Randy. Am I cutting too close? But, and so that's what the payouts were for. If there's no other comments, Clerk Rattari?
Clerk Rattari is yes. Trustee Durant.
Yes.
Trustee LaRue.
Yes.
Trustee Truscott.
Yes.
Treasurer Johnson.
Yes.
And Supervisor Limata.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0 and 1 absent.
And just a quick comment on this. The reason it's taking this long is it was to set up the accounts for people to deposit to, so it was tax deferred.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is 11C. Consider the Public Works Center, DDR number 1. Jim and Bromley both reserved time to speak on this. You do have in your packet the transmittal dated March 13th, 2014, that discusses the renovation expansion of the Public Works facility and some of the design issues that came up as a result of it. You also received today, or should have received today, a email with an additional attachment that goes into greater detail on those DDR requested items number 2 for clarification on the design elements that were uncovered in the course of construction. And I know that Mr. Hall is going to provide some commentary in regards to that as well.
Just to remind board members, this is the first DDR, which stands for Design Development Revision. For this portion of the project, the first 2 phases, we had several of these. Basically what this results from is the preliminary design and engineering that was done. As you get into a project, you run into things that were unexpected. That's what these are. They are revisions of the original design development to address building codes that we didn't believe applied that do, or things that we find as we get into the building and start rehabbing the building.
Thanks, Randy. Jim?
Okay, thank you. Attached in your packet is basically a cover letter that states the total net increase to the contract is $28,000, $711.30. That total actually consists of 6 items that are additions to the contract and 2 items that are credits or reductions to the contract. I won't go, there is an attachment to the letter, a small spreadsheet detailing each item, but rock excavation for unknown subsurface conditions. There was an election by the township to reduce the blacktop covering from 3 inches to 2 inches, which was a credit. One of the code issues that came up on item number 3 in the spreadsheet is an exhaust system for CO2 gases that is required for the apparatus or equipment bay that the township trucks will be parked and operating out of. Some electric work associated with that system. Another item that came up is for the grinder room, is we needed to include a grease separator for the grinder room because of the materials that come off the grinders when they do their maintenance functions, and we didn't want that material to be in the same waste pipe as the bathrooms and everything, so it was more of a long-term maintenance issue that would save headaches for the township because of those materials introduced into the waste system. There was a credit for changing the interior parking. Instead of using paint, we're actually gonna use decals that attach, or adhesive decals that adhere to the floor. It's an indoor application, so those should work quite well. Decal systems don't work real well in outdoor applications because of our climate, but I'm sure you've seen them. They're used quite often in handicap parking lots for the handicap parking areas. And then there was the biggest one we ran into was we had to do some engineering and some metal support systems for the building roof itself, and there was the letter that you received today that explained that, and I would defer to Bromley a little bit of his construction expertise in describing that, but basically there were some posts holding up the original back wall that need to be removed, and we need to put beams up above them so in order to support the new roof.
Long story short, they were buried in a wall, so we didn't see them, didn't know they were there. Didn't see them or know that they were there until we got that back wall down, and then the engineering required, and Bromley, you'll deal with it, the engineering required that they be replaced. And the reason you received that email today is because I requested additional information for you just to kind of clarify what happened on that.
I would like to put on the record, there is one outstanding issue that we don't have final resolution on, and that has to deal with ADA compliance for the grinder room. Because of rock and site conditions, the grinder room has to be elevated, and it's a different floor level. I believe it's 16 inches higher from. And because of that differential, that would require a ramp to comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act. Because of the job descriptions, it's not going to be a public building where people come and go, so it's not a compliance issue for the public, it's more of a compliance issue for employees. The employees have physical requirements in their job descriptions that require them to lift minimum amounts of weight and minimum height requirements. So because of those job descriptions, we are going to be filing, or we're looking for a definition or a variance from the building codes people to not put that ramp in because of the physical requirements. None of the employees are going to be handicapped because of the physical requirements, so the ramp essentially wouldn't be needed. So we will probably see a credit come back once we get the final resolution on that. I think the downside of that right now is potentially if we go the route of filing a variance with the county construction codes, there's a, and Randy, correct me if I'm wrong, a $400 fee.
That's correct.
Filing fee for the variance.
It's an application fee. So we're trying to
Ron, we
avoid
can
that.
Get into more detail maybe on the potential credit. I don't have that with me right now, but there would be an additional credit or a reduction to the contract by not having to build that ramp, either by concrete or by steel.
And we believe the building code does provide an exception that we're prepared to argue. Mr. Hall is working with the construction codes department to try and avoid having to file the appeal.
Yeah, we do believe that we found an exception within the code where we don't even have to make an appeal, being that it's a grinder storage room. They're going to be doing a little bit of routine maintenance in there. There is one exception in the code that exempts it, for storage areas for that access. So I do believe we've been dealing with integrated as well as the county building codes on that one. So I don't believe that we're going to have to go as far as the appeal on it. At that point, there probably would be a several $1,000 credit if we can get away with that, because then it introduces just 2 stairs, steel structure with a railing system as compared to a 20-foot ramp that was initially designed out of concrete walls. The slab is a wash because there's still a slab there, but I would expect $3,000 to $4,000 credit.
Questions for Bromley or Jim? Ernie?
I just had a question. You're talking about the grease separator? Now, understanding what grease is, and you're separating it out so it doesn't get into wherever you want, where it normally would go. Is it an easy maintenance to get in and clean out that grease trap or whatever you wanna call it?
Yeah, there's, right next to the trench drain, within a couple of feet, there's about an 18-inch lid for this grease trap. And the grease trap is about 2 feet deep, so it's be very easy to get to.
'Cause I could just see maintenance if it isn't.
Yeah.
Take a lot of
No,
work.
This one's very simple because it's a small capacity. We have a grease trap on the other side of the building, but we were concerned because of the septic grease that comes off of these grinder pumps. I'm not sure if any of you have ever seen them come out of there, but they come out of there with some nasty stuff on them. We wanted to separate that independently, because otherwise we would have had to travel nearly 160 feet to get to the other grease trap, which, you know, could potentially clog the pipes up on the way. So we decided to put the second interceptor in there, which seemed to make good sense to everybody.
Additional questions for Bromley, Jim? Seeing none. I just have one question for you, Bromley, and that's, as we're moving forward and as we did these changes in place, I'm guessing that you've opened up most of the building. We don't anticipate we're going to see any more structural surprises with the remainder of the project.
No, we should not. Everything is uncovered. And like you spoke earlier, and as the letter goes into detail, integrated structural engineer and ourselves early on in the design development saw the columns there, but as I say in the letter, they were a light gauge C-channel, which didn't throw any flags to us that they actually carried any bearing weight other than lateral wind forces against the steel siding. When that was taken down, it was all covered. We couldn't see what the size of the beam was, the roof beam. Once the mezzanine for the day room and the exercise room came down, it exposed the beam up above, which didn't nearly look adequate. So we had integrated come in and size that up. And as we found, we have to re-support it. You know, it's not an immense amount of work. A good majority of that is the materials itself, and it's essentially going to be two separate beams sized almost identical to what's there, but they're going to be below it and 3 additional columns for the support.
I know that we had some weather delays that were creating some issues, especially with the cold weather and your rather unique solution that you showed us last time to being able to thaw the ground out in order to pour concrete. How much has that delayed us, and when do you think that we would be able to occupy the building?
We actually only lost 8 days, believe it or not. As we kind of thought during the last update meeting, we had dug down. I think it was nearly 3 feet at that point. There was still a little bit of frost in there. That following week, we brought the mini excavators in and did all the underground plumbing. Frost was gone that following week, so.
Great.
8 days. The initial occupancy date was April 15th. And I don't see it going beyond the 8 days.
Great, thank you.
Should be in good shape. I decided not to do a photo presentation because we are at a good point, an interesting point of the build. We'd like to invite you guys up there to take a look at it. We've got, as we said, the concrete is poured, masonry interior walls are going up, the metal stud interior walls are going up. We're going to start the drywall on Thursday. There's a lot of stuff happening. It'll be a good time to get you guys in there.
Do you have a day and a time that would be conducive to having board members come through while there's still guys working in there?
It's entirely up to you guys if you want to do it. I seem to remember on these 2 previous projects that we did it on a Saturday, I believe, if I remember correctly.
Right.
We could do it anytime. It's a big enough space. There's a lot of open area in there. If it works out for the group better, we can do it during the week.
What's the board's preference, a Saturday morning or later evening on a weekday?
Later during the day.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a day that works best for
Friday, 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock?
Fridays at 3 o'clock? Is that possible?
Yeah, that would, we're talking this upcoming Friday?
I won't be there Friday.
Would
What time,
most,
wait, what time?
3, is there a time that works better
It would
for
be
you?
fine. It would be
Yeah,
fine.
3, any time, you know, it's entirely up to you guys, whatever works for you.
Lynn, okay?
Yep.
Clerk Rattari? Friday at 3 o'clock?
Okay, so
Okay with you?
that's the
I'll be out of
21st then, correct?
You'll be out of town.
Second full day of spring.
Okay. And any other comment or any questions for Jim or Bromley? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to approve the net increase to the contract of $28,711.30.
So moved.
Second.
There's no other discussion. We have a motion and a second to approve for $28,711.30. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you.
I just wanted to say, I did see Pete sneak in there probably about a week ago, and he wasn't even wearing his hard hat.
I had to bring a lift up there. I brought the lift up there for putting up the ductwork and the piping.
Likely story. You should have thrown him out immediately.
He tried. I ran.
Right.
Walked fast.
You walk fast.
Thanks, Jim. The next item on our agenda is 11D, consider the North Country Disposal Contract Extension. Superintendent Page is here, and Kirk, if you wouldn't mind coming up to the podium. There is a transmittal dated March 12th from Superintendent Page in discussion, basically requesting the annual cost of living adjustment to their fees, which is in their contract, and he recommends approval of the 1.5% adjustment. But he's also recommending approval of a 5-year extension of the current agreement. And with that having been said, Superintendent Page, anything you'd like to add?
Well, it says it is expiring. It actually expired the 15th. And the current contract does allow for 2 optional 1-year extensions. But we have basically been contracting with several different contract extensions for 10 years with North Country Disposal. And during that time, they've expanded and improved their equipment fleet and manpower and facilities. And they've improved their procedures, methods, and efficiency. And they've complied with every special request that we've ever made. And customer complaints have been reduced to virtually 0. And they're local business, so they're pretty easy to communicate with. And in my opinion, it's been a model relationship, you know, public-private partnership. So for all those reasons, I'm recommending extending the current contract for 5 years. You know, when we initially, the first contract, you know, we did bid it out, and they didn't bid the first time. But both the other prices were extremely high, so we basically rebid it, and they were like $40,000 annually cheaper. And as I mentioned, you know, it's only improved over the last 10 years. A few years back, we tried to partner with the city in contracting for these services, but it's the same result. You know, we couldn't get a single contractor, you know, to bid both communities, so we went back with North Country, and the city continued on with Waste Management. So
I know the last time we looked at it, Kirk, the city's contract hauler, Waste Management, had an issue with coming out to the township, primarily because of the number of dead ends that we have that didn't make routing.
well, yeah, I had I actually just had a meeting with Waste Management earlier this week, or last week, I should say, and I did discuss that with them. Because initially, one of the issues that we had with North Country was they couldn't accommodate recycling, you know, at the 100% level that we wanted, mainly because they didn't have enough storage, you know, to transport, you know, like every week. So there were some trips, you know, it went to the landfill. But they've, like I said, now they've improved that, so 100% If it goes in the recycling bin, it is in fact recycled, you know, every pound of it. But initially, I tried to negotiate with Waste Management to say, okay, would you be willing to bid on recycling? Because we had a number of different services that we were requesting, and they were all separate costs. And basically their answer was no. So last week I asked them that question again, and it was strictly a business decision. I mean, they can't cherry pick, just certain parts of a contract. It's all or nothing. So,
Right. What's the board's pleasure? We have it before us. He's basically asked him for two things. One is the cost of living allowance adjustment of 1.5%, but at the same time to renew the contract for an additional 5 years. What's the board's pleasure? Ernie?
I think it's two different motions, what you're talking about here. One is the adjustment for now, and then to get into the actual contract and that. But the question I have on the contract, you say it's the same one we have now? Is there any changes to it?
I'm not recommending any changes to it. There is a potential for a change in the services. You're probably aware that the county landfill is building a materials recycling facility in the city of Marquette. The details aren't finalized yet, but there's a possibility that we may be able to utilize that facility and thereby reduce some of the services that North Country will be providing. Right now they do curbside garbage pickup. They do curbside recycling, and it's a mixed stream recycling. And they do the monthly rubbish drop off and the year-round compostable materials drop off. And they also do curbside Christmas tree pickup. So some of those services, well, all those services are going to be offered at the new facility. And again, like I said, I don't know the details yet. I don't know what the cost would be. But there's a potential savings, in particular with the rubbish drop-off.
Ernie, go ahead.
Another question. During the contract years that we've had, when the price of fuel went up, they came in for adjustments and all
Right.
that.
Yep. That's still in the contract, but they haven't requested an adjustment in I don't know, 2 or 3 years. I can't
Yeah.
remember the last one.
If you remember back when the prices were going up and then they went way down, I asked the question is it reversible? Does the price go down now because the price of fuel went down? And
Well, it is reversible, but you have to look at the whole year period, so it's not like we can't change it like every week, So, and that they documented their gallons use over a 1 year period, so. And it has to go down, I think, a quarter or something like that for that to apply, so. It is reversible. It hasn't happened, but it is reversible.
And the COLA adjustments are in the new contract then too,
It's in the old contract,
and we'll
and
carry it forward.
I'm not proposing any changes to the contract unless somebody's got any suggestions on anything you'd like to change.
Anyone else? Lynn?
Are you still recommending the 5 years then, if we have a chance of
Yes.
doing something
There's
with
no
the city? It
question
wouldn't happen that fast?
It's just better for everybody to have a longer-term contract. And that's one of the things, previously we had shorter-term contracts with North Country. And when we went with the city, I think they were actually, I don't recall, I think we were going for a 10-year contract, actually. Because it's just too difficult to switch every year or two, One of the reasons that they've been able to make the improvements that they have is because basically we have had a longer-term contract. If you're a business and you're trying to borrow money to get started, it's hard if you've only got like a short-term contract to do your work. So it's, like I say, it's mutually beneficial.
Yeah, and I think that is the key. The key is with that longer-term contract, they are more comfortable in making the longer-term investment to serve the needs that we have. But I think the question that I'm hearing the board members ask, Kirk, is the current contract, the way that it's currently written, does it provide you the flexibility to be able to react when and if the city opens this new facility? Is that flexibility in the contract?
Oh, yes. Yep.
Okay, and I think that's the question that a couple of the board members were asking. So if that flexibility is there, I think the board members are much more comfortable with it.
So in other words, we've got services broken out, so if we elect to discontinue one service, then they cost zero. But of course, we have to balance what the, you know, the new cost would be. But I am seriously looking at it. Right now, even the recycling, will probably at some point, I'll recommend going with that. But right now, the way it's gonna be set up is, basically it's gonna be, alternating weeks. So in other words, you have to, you know, this week you put out your fiber, and the following week you put out your glass and metal, and, you know, so it's just a little bit, it's not as user-friendly doing it this way. I mean, we've really, in my opinion, again, improved the services a lot over the last 10 years. Basically, we've got everything covered, you know, imaginable, curbside. And what's not curbside, I mean, you know, the county has the household hazardous waste drop-off, you know, that's available. So, you know, in my opinion, it's a good deal.
I think the one line in your transmittal says it all. Customer complaints have been reduced to virtually zero.
Right. It's just hard to argue with that. I mean, you know, there were complaints with previous contractors, and the problem, you know, again, and not to, you know, criticize, you know, any company, but it's a huge difference, you know, dealing with the local business. I mean, the other company is a global corporation, you know. So there's a number that you call if you got a problem, but God knows where the person who answers that phone is. They're certainly not in Marquette, you know, so.
Right.
Excuse me.
Go ahead, Pete.
It seemed like you liked the 5 years contract, and it
Right.
seemed to work out for you.
And I also would recommend an option for another 5-year extension as well.
Right, that'd be our option.
But again, that would still be, you know, it wouldn't be automatic. You would
Right.
still have to.
We have to decide. But also on the gas, in a service-oriented business, the gas thing, it does fluctuate. When the gas goes up so many cents a gallon, it'll stay there for a little while, and then you usually adjust it. But that's in
Right.
every service organization I know of, I mean, from all grocery stores to anyone who gets served, if the gas prices jump so much, they charge more for the delivery to the product, so, and then they adjust it after it goes down, but it has to go up, you know, several cents, I mean, more than what we do right here, but,
Right.
you know, I
Well,
think
and I
that's
tell you
normal
what,
for the
as-
industry,
as
so.
of, when we started doing this several years ago, I was already paying fuel adjustment cost on a lot of things. If I had to get stuff delivered, you know, by truck, which is a lot of
Mhm.
material doesn't come by truck, you know, there was an automatic fuel adjustment, which, you know, I couldn't say, no, I'm not gonna pay it, but, I mean, that's just the cost of doing business.
I think it's a good idea.
So it seemed fair, you know, the city has instituted that policy as well, so.
Do you have concerns or any mention that into two motions, Clerk Watari, versus one?
That would be cleaner doing two.
And would somebody like to make the first motion, just addressing the COLA adjustment at 1.5%?
I'll move to adjust the COLA adjustment to 1.5%.
Second.
Motion is second. Other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed?
Just have a question on it. This goes back to March 15th, doesn't it? We
Yes.
have to do it, so does that have to be in the motion? Adjusted as of
It's
March?
in his transmittal. I think it's
I don't think so. That's the beginning date of the
of
contract.
Okay.
And then a second motion for a
5 year and
5-year agreement with an option for a 5-year extension.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Motion is second. Additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes.
When does this become effective? April 1st or March 15th?
March
March
15th.
15th.
March 15th, okay. That should be in the minutes too, effective as of March 15th.
Yeah, is the clerk gonna be required to sign this, Kirk?
Yes.
So, that's fine. Would you amend your motion to
And, yeah.
authorize the clerk to
authorize the
sign it?
clerk.
I'll amend the second.
Everybody still agrees with the amended motion?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes. Motion still passes. Thanks, Kirk.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda, 11E, consider establishing the date for the joint meeting with the Planning Commission we've gone around a couple times, Ellen and I, and trying to figure out what was best for everybody. And finally, she just threw it back on our laps and said, you guys figure it out and give us a date and we'll be there. Give us 2 dates and we'll pick one. My first question is, what's your pleasure? Would you prefer to do it at a lunch time, or would you prefer to do it later evening?
Either one's fine for me.
I know we had one that was a very conducive lunch when we did it with them a couple years ago, and it worked well.
That's great.
Depending on what the date is, I can do a lunch.
So is there a date that everybody absolutely needs to avoid? Or is there something, I mean, I guess we can give them,
What are we looking into?
I would think that we want to give them at least a week or more's notice, and
We're looking like in April?
I'll be gone, so I would say starting on the week of April 7th, one of the days, 7th through the 11th.
Has to be a Monday or a Friday in that week for me.
April 7th, a Monday.
Okay.
I would say 7th and 14th and just have them pick out the 2 days.
Want to do that, the 7th or the 14th, either of them a Monday? A
Sure.
noon meeting?
Fine.
Then I will, I will contact Ellen, she'll get out to the planning commissioners, and I'll have the date back out and get an email out to everybody.
And once we get that finalized, I'll have to post that, so, I'll let everyone know what it is.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is consider the recommended resolutions from the Planning Commission. We have Mike Springer and Dave Wiegand here as representatives from the Rec Committee to talk about the large development grant, the small development grant, and the recreation passport grant. All of the information is in your packets. There are some updates, just in some minor language updates that Chair Springer has brought up for consideration. And Mike, if you want to take the floor.
Send them out that way.
One down at a time, please. Lynn is gonna pass down 4 documents to you. 2 of them are intensive notices. There's 2 different grants, with the MNRTF. And then also she's gonna pass down a, project scope or costs that Dave Wiegand's gonna talk about as well. So just, keep those in order, it'd be easier.
Just tell me when you want to do either one. It's probably easier. Tell me which one you want me to do when.
Oh, that's okay. You can give them all out to them now, so
Okay.
they have them.
And I'll take one and pass it down. Do it this way. Like that. Take one of each.
Cover me.
So, okay.
They're gonna run for it.
Okay, this is from the Rec Committee, put this together recently. It's important to go over the guidelines so everybody understands what these state grants are. First of all, the Michigan Natural Resource Trust Fund grant. In 2010, we purchased some land, which is west and adjacent to Schwemig Park, that now gives us access, high-grade level access to the Iron Ore Heritage Trail. In light of that, the Rec Committee, 4 years later, would like to move ahead with another grant, so that, a development grant, so that we can make that park into, as the plans show back there. Please note that we stand a really good chance on at least one of these 2 grants, because one of the priorities this year is trails. Note that the development grants that we're applying for, the minimum is a $20,000 grant, and we can go up to a $300,000 grant on development. This is important to note that the board, if they pass a resolution and commit to this, that this is a reimbursement grant. That means that any development that occurs has to happen, the township's gonna have to pay for that, get all the receipts, all that, submit it to the MNRTF for reimbursement. So this reimbursement grant, just as the acquisition grant was. We are able, right now, the minimum match is 25%. You're gonna see, and if you remember back to 2010 when we started out with 25 and came back and asked for another percent. But we're going to, both of these grants are applied at the 26% level. There's no limit on grants, and that's why we're applying for 2 of these. We're going to make the one grant, the larger one, is going to be our priority grant. We get a little more points for that. And the smaller grant will be second. What you have in your packet, you received 2 notice of intents for 2 different grants. And there are some small minor changes in the documents that I just passed out to you today. If you'll notice, and this is on the small development grant, this is the $49,600 grant. You'll see some text in green, which probably is difficult to read, but that has been changed. That's been added. Text in green has been added. What I'm also proposing to do is to pull out the text that is highlighted in yellow. And on the back side of those documents, you see a little bit more green text that has been added. That's in light of our meeting with Superior Alliance of Independent Living yesterday, and Mr. Rod Desjardins, so we added that as well. On the larger development grant, you'll notice that the green text is different than the smaller development grant, because in this one we're also planning, or we're going to improve the parking lot as well for ADA and universal access. Again, you'll see some yellow text where I'm removing Marquette Township, and the backside is the same. So those are the only changes in that. I'm going to ask Mr. Wiegand if he would come up here and explain the scope of both of these grants.
And Mike, before you go, one of the concerns that you had is that the MNRTF doesn't have as much funding as it had, or there's more people applying for grants, correct?
Yes, and let me answer some other things. There's more information here too, and I just it's a very limited field this year. Funds are very limited. We're probably only talking in single-digit millions, where years ago it was quite a bit higher. So it is very competitive this year, and Dave's going to explain it to you. But the smaller grant historically have always been granted. Anything under $50,000 historically. Now this year it could be different. They may change that. But at the workshop that they held this year, that was still mentioned, that was feasible. So another thing that happens if we look at the larger grant, the 96.2, I believe it is. Let me go back to, $96,200. This is where we enter into competition. This is the competitive grant. Anytime we go above $50,000, then we're actually thrown into another pool. Information that I had recently from Carol Fulsher with the Iron Ore Heritage Recreation Authority indicates that the MNRTF are going to be looking for a higher percentage in match in the competitive grants. And she got that from a professional grant writer and an individual who writes a lot of these grants. Fortunately, I emailed Miss Christy Baez, who is our grant coordinator. I emailed her today, and she responded that we can change those percentages at a later date if the board so desires. And what's going to happen is we should get a preliminary scoring, which will show what our score is, and then at that point we can make some recommendations as to whether or not we want to go But right now, there is no other commitment from this board other than what Dave's gonna show you in red ink. So, does that answer your question?
Yep, thanks, Mike. I just wanted the board to be aware of it as well, so as we move forward, and you're gonna ask us to do these resolutions for this evening moving forward, and I want them to understand that what we're up against, that it's not as easy as it once was.
Right. Thank you.
The first thing you gotta keep in mind about the two grants is the small development grant and the large development grant are somewhat connected in that they are numbered. And the priority is a large development grant for 96.2. The number 2 goes on the small development grant for 49.6. If you get the large development grant for 96.2, we don't get the small development grant for 49.6. You only get one or the other. The scope of work in the 49.6 small development grant is included in the large development grant for 96.2. There are just additional items added there. The theory being, if we can get the 96.2, we will accomplish all of the work that was in the small development grant with some addition, with some parking lot work. And we can go over that here in just a few minutes. But we're not asking you to commit to 96.2 plus 49.6. The max this will get to is 96.2. If it gets to 96.2 and we are awarded that grant, our match is $25,100. We have currently got from the Iron Ore Heritage Trail Rec Authority a commitment for $25,000 for development of the connecting trail from the parking lot to the trailhead. And at the last Planning Commission meeting, Carol also committed them to another $7,500 for the kiosk and trail signage that would be associated with that at the trailhead. So that brings that up to $32,500 is what their commitment is towards this grant. What we're looking for matching funds for the 96.1 is 25.1, which would be out of that 32.7 or 32.5. So there'd still be some money left over in that. So there's no budget impact other than it's a reimbursement grant. There's no budget impact out of the township budget for that. If we don't get the large grant request and we go down to the small grant request, the match for that is $13,000. That would again come out of that 20 or out of that 32.5, which leaves a question of what are we going to do with the rest of the money, but we've never had a problem spending money yet, so we'll come up with something.
Is the potential exists so that somewhere down the road, it's true that if we needed to improve our chances, once we see the initial scaling and where we've been, if we need to improve our chances, you can come back to the board and ask us to have additional match funds set aside, because right now we're using Iron Ore Heritage Rec Authority match funds.
And you can see that where this is going is if their initial scoring comes back and it looks like our chances are much improved for the 96.2 by increasing our match, we can increase it all the way up to 32.5 and not hurt the township budget at all. It's just using the rest of that money. But I mean, you obviously don't want to go in and offer up that money if it's not needed to get the grant. You want to take as much money out of that as you can.
Right.
So that would be something that after the initial scoring comes out, that if it's needed or if we're at the bottom of the list or we think we need some more points, that the rec committee would come back to the board and ask them for authorization to increase to whatever percentage we think is necessary, and at that time we'd come up with where we think we're going to get the funds, whether it would be the balance of the Iron Ore Heritage Trail funds or if they want to throw something in besides that to increase the match. But that would be something that would have to be considered at a later date, and that can be increased, our match can be increased all the way up to October of this year. So we've got some time to work on that.
Thanks, Dave.
If you look on the, I'm not computer literate. If you look on the small development grant, what's being considered in the small development grant is everything on this gray trail area from the parking lot all the way up here to the
trailhead where it joins, and it joins up here because this is where the grade comes up and matches the grade on the Arnott Heritage Trail. The reason it wanders around here is because of the contour lines, and we want to make it universal access and ADA compliant, so it wanders around there to maintain the contour lines and keep the grade right without causing a lot of extra work and a lot of extra money. The large development grant includes all of this area plus the parking lot work. It includes a number of items that are listed under there, the sign, the striping, and all that. But it's, where'd they go? Here it is.
Wait a minute. Sorry. That shouldn't be up here doing this. That's not where we're going.
There we go.
Okay.
Stay.
I'll stay.
The large development grant includes all of this trail. The parking lot improvements. It does not include the restroom changing area. That's a separate grant that's been submitted to Cliffs Lundin that has already been submitted. There's no matching funds involved in that, and we are just waiting to hear back on whether we got that or not. And that's how all that ties together with the grants we're submitting for. And unless you have questions on that, I can go on to the passport grant.
Lynn?
We still have to come up with the 96 too, if we end up getting that grant. We still have to have that come out of some budget somewhere. So to quote
Initially-
our treasurer, where's the
initially
money
with
coming from?
reimbursement. Yeah.
Can we handle that, Manager Gerard? It would be in pieces because we wouldn't necessarily, we'd do it in phases, but we'd still have to come up with 96,000.
Well, we do have some money. We do have some money in the budget for the recreation in several different areas. So,
Pull it.
we pull from those areas. We do have money set aside specifically for the new ice rink and specifically for the kiddie park upgrades. Those are set aside funds, but we also have other funds for recreation.
And
Okay.
realistically,
And
none
reimburse
of
them.
this, while the grant is gonna be awarded this year, and we'll know by the year's end if we're gonna get the grant, none of this work is actually gonna take place until 2015. So we got lots of time to address the budget issue.
So we can do that, get the money if, next time we start on the budget, and so I don't see no problem if.
Yeah,
any
and
of
we
them
just, all we have to do is address where it's actually gonna come
Right.
from before the reimbursement.
Make some changes and get it done.
Ernie?
On the reimbursement, do you have to send in everything for the total grant, or can it be as you progress, start sending them in and get reimbursed?
I'm not exactly sure, because the only time we've dealt with this grant has been on a purchase or an acquisition grant, which that's just a one lump sum, so I'm not sure on how you submit your reimbursement. I think it's a lump sum, but I'm just not sure.
Other questions? Passport grant?
Okay, well, Mike has been doing the bulk of the work on the MNRTF at Schwemmwood. Jason McCarthy has been doing the bulk of the work for the passport grant. He and Mike have been working together, but since its initial intent has been submitted, Jason is finishing it up. I talked to Jason, he had to leave, but he assures me that he's on schedule for it. You have that information in your board packet. And that also is due April 1st, and he assures the rec committee that it'll be done and submitted on time. What we're looking for there is $42,000, of which the match is $11,000. That could come from two sources, the matching funds. That can come out of the rec committee budget, or it could come out of the KBIC $27,000 that the board earmarked for recreation. We can address that. We just have to know, we just have to give them an idea where it's coming from. We have to verify that it's actually there, and then we can decide what we're actually it's gonna be up to the board to decide where it actually comes from.
And that 42,000, Dave, was earmarked to accomplish what?
That is the kiddie park. That is and we got some stuff in today, which we just got between the rec committee meeting at 5:30 and the board meeting at 7 o'clock, that from one consultant or one design team that put together a kiddie park project for it, which looks quite complete. We'll have to have a time to take a look at it and read through it and see what it actually, the contents actually have in it. So that's the first one, and that is, shows a total, and again, we have to read it and get the final numbers, but it shows a total of just shy of $50,000. We have requests out for a second bid on that, and that's from a firm in Manistee, and he assured us that that would be here between Wednesday and Friday of this week. So that will be available. That information, along with layouts and everything else, has to go in with the passport grant applications. That's what the rush is, to get that stuff available.
So what I do want to point out to the board in relation to that Kitty Park grant for Lions Field is that they're looking at $11,000 for match money for this grant at $42,000. Keep in mind that in our budget, we do have the money set aside to do Kitty Park this year as part of that third year phase of Lions Field's renovation. This would be money that we could use and then be able to earmark the money that we had set aside to complete either the ice rink. It may be that we're prepared to order the poly boards for the ice rink this year, but we're also, doing some reconfiguration there with the abandonment of Erie Avenue, additional parking. So there's no shortage of things that we could still spend the additional money that we've already set aside and earmarked for Lions Field at Lions Field. But it may be, if we were able to successfully secure this grant, would certainly mean a lot to us.
If we were successful with this grant, out of the Kitty Park funds that we have set aside, we could pay the match and have about $35,000 left over.
Yeah, but it gives us a couple options. If you throw the balance of the KBIC money, if none of that's used, you could throw all of the KBIC money towards Lions Field. The budget that was allowed for Kitty Park, if we get $31,000 of that from the passport grant, that's $31,000 that can go back in, that we don't have to spend out of the rec budget, and can go back into the rest of Lions Field, get it accomplished a little quicker.
Could come for the warming shack or
the warming shack has actually been submitted to
Cliffs Lundeen.
Cliff Lundeen in another grant request, and again, it's been submitted. We should hear back from it sometime here in the next month or so, but there's no match funds on those either. That's just a grant for, it's $100,000 and some thousand is what it was submitted for. I don't have the number right off the top of my head.
So what else you guys been working on? That it?
Yeah, that's about
So what you need from us this evening, correct me if I'm wrong, are the 3 resolutions that we have in the packet. One for the large grant, one for the small grant, and then for the passport grant.
That's correct. Those resolutions, it needs to be a formal resolution so that the documentation of all that needs to go in with the grant submission.
Including
along with the minutes of this meeting.
The minutes of this meeting.
Right.
Okay.
We're also going to need a letter to go along with the intent, and I can send, it's probably best if it came from the board or the clerk, and I can send a copy of a previous letter of intent that we sent back in 2010. Actually, Randy Gerard, I believe, has a copy of that, don't you? Okay, if you could get that to Clerk Rotari, that'd be great. Thank you. And then we'll send both that with the edited intents, intents as well. Just want to, this year is quite a bit different in the fact that we have to apply online. And you can see here that we have applied for 3 grants. We started the process of the passport grant back in February of 27, or the 27th of February, and also the small application for Michigan Natural Resource Trust Fund grant on the 25th of February. This online process has been quite a bit of a challenge. We spent quite a bit of time trying to make sure we have access to this and we can upload stuff. This is just one. This is what the grant requires. And you can see the dates that we started things, and as we're working on it, what needs to be submitted. You can see from this particular one that there are still a number of items that are in error or that have to be included. I want to show you one thing tonight because this is important. These are, this particular grant requires photographs of the site, and they ask you to identify the map and point the direction that the camera was taken, and so they want to be able to have a virtual tour of this property without having to come here. Although we will have a site visit, hopefully it will be in June, and it will occur after National Trails Day. We plan to celebrate National Trails Day on June 7th. That's the first Saturday in June. There'll be more on that coming. So with these photographs, I worked on this over the weekend and put this together. And what I did is I used photographs from Schwamwood Park dating back to everything from 2007. We have photographs of events that took place there. And because there are photographs of people that are here in this room tonight and other people that are out in the public, I think it's important that you see what I plan to send in, just in case you have some issues. So that's what this is about. Of course, we're going to identify the Iron Ore Heritage Trail. This is an old map where we were trailhead number 9, and that's what we applied as. Now we're trailhead number 8. That's a good sign. That means we're moving up. So I think it's something we should be proud of. This is just, of course, from the Iron Ore Heritage Trail mapping showing our park. Also shows the phase 3 of our trail connectors that we would like to see in the future at Schwamwood Park. Also shows how to get there. And this is, we have to submit a boundary map, and this is one of the maps that we may submit. Actually, Jason has updated a new map for us, and we may put that in there as well. And a location map, our master plan map, and here we go. All right, so here's the rendition of photos at this site. And so we have 3 photos coming up. This is from National Trails Day 2007. We actually made the front page news above the fold. And there are 3 photos at the bottom showing people who were working out there and participating in a work day and celebrating National Trails Day on June, I believe it's June 1st, even though the article says June 3rd, 2007. So here are some other photographs. Tells you we're facing south here. This was up in the parking lot. We had a shelter and some information. In 2009, we did a cleanup at the park. We built a natural bridge facing east. You see the arrow pointing to the location. Here are some of the people that were involved in that. And you can see the natural bridge, because one of the things they're looking for is using natural materials to provide foot trail. And here is the former chairperson of the rec committee, proud of the accomplishment. Okay, so this is still cleanup. It's a cleanup day actually for June 2009. This is the bridge. It identifies the end of the bridge in that previous map. We're going to look at this facing west. Another group of people that were part of the cleanup crew. Some of these people were involved as a subcommittee of the rec committee called Trails and Greenways years ago, and they were actually the people that GPS'd Schwamwood and found existing trails and found that this was the place, that the property adjacent, which we purchased, was the place to have a trailhead. Here we go, National Trails Day 2010. We had the Boy Scouts involved. They did a tremendous amount of work on the trail. That same Trails Day, we're showing the back of Walmart. That's that building off in the upper right-hand corner. Walmart's there, and at this location. And by the way, Mrs. Berry's first name is Denise. I found that out. I will change that before it goes in. And so we have some, also this is 2010 again. This is the site visit from the MNRTF. And we have people from the Iron Ore. We have a board representative there. We have, I'm going to just name off the people from left to right. Linda Rance on the left. Lisa McTiernan, who is the project grant coordinator at the time, is there. Roger Berry is next to her. Cliff Stammer, who's the trail chief for North Country Trail. In front of him is Carol Fulcher with the Iron Heritage Recreation Authority. Behind her and to her, I don't know, the next person is Don Britton, kind of looking down with glasses back there. He's on the Iron Ore Heritage Recreation Authority Board. He's also on the Feasibility Committee Board that we were discussing earlier. And then Jim Thomas, he is the chair of the Iron Ore Heritage Recreation Authority. So, and here's a picture at that overlook identifying these people. We also have Liz Coyne, who joined us for that hike. This is a picture out of one of our criers a long time ago that basically shows the wetland overlook. This is now this past summer, National Trails Day. We celebrated June 1st. Used the parking lot for shelter and information. And then from, and we're looking at the proposed plan here, and it's not quite exactly like that right now, but this next picture was taken at that location at the sign. This actually comes from the crier version summer of 2013, where we recognized, well, this is Jason McCarthy, Township Planner, pointing out the development and what we propose to do. And we also are talking about the future. One of the things that the township realizes, or at least the rec committee realizes, that we need a safe crossing of US 41. And we've been talking about an underpass for years. This actually comes from Tira Karlstrom back in 2011. And we've talked with MDOT, and we've talked with a number of people, and hopefully sometime in the future, it is in the action plan of the rec committee for 2018, and hopefully sometime in the future we can move forward on that. We did have a meeting with NTN. You can see there is Mike Sauer, Derek Anderson, and Doug Wiesen from the NTN, and Dave Wiegand from our committee. We took a look at where this underpass would go, and Dave's here. We seem to think that it was a viable solution for getting people to the other side of US 41 from the south side to the north side and vice versa. We also did, and this is the ending of it. So the Marquette Township Recreation Committee is looking forward to our Michigan Natural Resource Trust Fund site visit this summer. The last two were in the winter, so hopefully they get that. But anyway, so that's what I plan to submit with the board had consensus on that, or if that's okay with the board, that would be great.
Thanks, Mike. Anybody have any additional questions for Mike while we have him here? Seeing none, we do have 3 resolutions before us dealing with all 3 of the grants. Clerk Wachari?
Yeah, we'll have to take each one of these separately since there are 3. They basically are all, I think the verbiage on all of them are the same except for the dollar amount. So I'll read one and we'll go from there. The first one is for the $25,100 match. And the resolution is resolved that the Charter Township of Marquette, Michigan does hereby accept the terms of the agreement as received from the Michigan Department of Natural Resources, and that the Charter Township of Marquette does hereby specifically agree, but not by way of limitation, as follows. Number 1, to appropriate all funds necessary to complete the project during the project period, and to provide $25,100 to match the large development grant authorized by the department, to maintain satisfactory financial records, documents, and records, to make them available to the department for auditing at reasonable times in perpetuity, to regulate the use of the property acquired and reserved under this agreement, to assure the use thereof by the public on equal and reasonable terms, And number 4, to comply with any and all terms of said agreement, including all terms not specifically set forth in the foregoing portions of this resolution. And like I stated before, all 3 resolutions have that verbiage. The only thing that is different is the dollar amounts. So I will make a motion to approve the first resolution for $25,100 match.
Second.
Motion to second. Comment, Ernie?
I think on where it says voting yes and nay, don't you have to put something in there saying one missing or something?
Yes, I will adjust this because, yeah, you do have to show the one absent.
One absent, yeah.
So
Any other comment? Clerk Chari?
Clerk Rattari is yes. Trustee LaRue?
Yes.
Trustee Truscott?
Yes.
Trustee Durant?
Yes.
Treasurer Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Limata?
Yes.
That motion carries 6 yes and 0 no and 1 absent. The next resolution, number 2, is the same verbiage except for the $13,000 to match the small development grant. And I make a motion to approve that resolution.
Support.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, Clerk Rattari?
Clerk Rattari is yes. Trustee Durant?
Yes.
Trustee Truscott?
Yes.
Trustee LaRue?
Yes.
Treasurer Johnson?
Yes.
And Supervisor Limata?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0 and 1. And the third resolution for the passport grant for $11,000 to match the recreation passport grant. And I will move that forward.
Support.
Motion and support. Additional comments? Seeing none, Clerk Rattari?
Clerk Rattari is yes. Treasurer Johnson?
Yes.
Trustee Truscott?
Yes.
Trustee LaRue?
Yes.
Trustee Durant?
Yes.
And Supervisor Limata?
Yes.
Motion carries. 6-0 and 1 absent.
Dennis? Oh,
Those resolutions will be in their entirety in the board minutes.
I just want to make a comment on how much we appreciate Mike Springer, Dave, and Jason, how much work was it, because they're under a deadline for April 1st. And for Mike just to go, I've seen him in all the meetings, and he's really done a lot of work. Dave and him have been working on it. Jason, all 3 of them, they did a great job, and I really appreciate it, and I want to thank them.
Thanks, Pete. On behalf of the board, thank you. I understand how much work you put into it. I understand the time constraints. You've done a very commendable job, like always, Mike, and most of these things wouldn't move forward if we didn't have someone like you, which is why I told you we get separation anxiety anytime you try to step down from anything. We're going to have to keep you around for quite some time. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the manager's report. You have the written transmittal from Manager Gerard dated March 13th in your packet. Randy?
Just a couple of updates. As Trustee LaRue mentioned earlier, Senator Casperson was in town recently. He brought Representative Kivala and several other representatives in with him. Representative McBroom was here, as well as Representative DeAnda. And they basically met with the City of Ishpeming, the City of Negaunee, and Marquette County, talking about the freeze-up situations. The first item on my report is an update of where we're at. We're not suffering as much as some of the other jurisdictions are as a result of our actions in the last freeze-up in 94-95. But I have been in touch with the senator and the representatives, as well as the MTA, to try and coordinate a more coordinated approach for cities and townships. None of the townships were talked to when the representatives were here, senator and representatives. So I think it's important that the information dealing with the townships, Forsyth Township, our township, Chocolate Township, we're all suffering the same issues as a result of the long-standing freeze. And you look out the window, it's kind of hard to believe that Thursday is the first day of spring. Kind of typical for this area, but not quite as heavy usually. So I have not had any response back from them, but I expect that we will be getting involved in some discussion. We are all involved with the County Emergency Services Department. We're trying to pressure the governor into declaring a state of emergency so we can get some reimbursement. So I said ours has not been as significant as it has in some of the western jurisdictions that started freezing much earlier than we did. So we'll keep you updated on that. A couple of items of good news this morning. I attended the small urban project meeting, road projects up at the Road Commission. The result of that is that we have successfully moved forward 3 recommendations for Marquette Township for funding in 2015, 16, and 17, all involving Ontario, which ultimately will result in the full length of Ontario being reconstructed as Werner was, along with drainage and we'll call it a safety strip on one side, basically all the way from Werner to Wright Street. First phase of it would be from Werner to Allen and possibly all the way to Center, and then the final phase would be from Center on to Wright Street. The last project that was approved in Marquette Township was an improvement to Wright Street from the Marquette city limits all the way to Commerce. So that'll be in 2017. So those are recommendations that are going to MDOT for funding. The funding that comes from MDOT is about $375,000. The Road Commission kicks in another $125,000 to make it an even $500,000 for each of those projects. So that's going forward. The other piece of good news is that our Court of Appeals hearing with the big box issue has been scheduled for April the 8th. So it's coming up very quick.
Location.
It will be in Lansing, is where the hearing will be. The 3-judge panel has been appointed. They will be meeting in Lansing, and we'll be traveling to Lansing with Attorney Fahey to be present for that hearing. So we're looking forward to that coming up and finally getting resolved one way or the other, hopefully our way, and we'll go from there.
We have been notified by the State Tax Commission that they will have a representative in attendance, which is good for us because it just shows the importance of the suit as we brought it forward in our challenge against the Michigan Tax Tribunal. When you have somebody like the Michigan Tax Commission who sends our assessor just a notification to see if we're going to be there and to let us know that she will be there in attendance, it just really sends that message out to the Court of Appeals that this is big, it's statewide, it's not just our little neck of the woods that's being impacted, that this has a huge impact on the amount of taxes collected across the state. And when you have somebody like the State Tax Commission who takes notice and goes there, it lends credence to our challenge.
And I've also been in contact with the Michigan Association of Counties and the MTA and the MML, as well as individually with all 83 counties in the state to let them know that we're going there on April the 8th and to ask for their financial and participatory support. So we'll see what happens.
Questions for Manager Gerard? Lynn?
This one. Treasurer Johnson had mentioned about the lead runs with the water. That report is February. When did we start doing the lead runs?
We actually, we started early February with let runs on some of the problem areas that we expected. The topography here in the township is pretty rocky, so we have some of our water lines and some of our sewer lines that are fairly shallow and they have rock under them. Now, we've insulated those. Back in 94, 95, those were all dug up and insulated when the freeze happened before, but just on a precautionary note, we asked them to start early in February to let runs when we saw the long-range forecast of being below freezing for a significant period of time, and that worked fairly well. That minimized the freeze-ups that we actually had. We really didn't have any serious freeze until about early March. When we had freeze-up right along US 41, the Wausau building was vacant for the weekend, and that froze solid. That took us basically 2 days to get open, and then we did have one 4-inch force main, sewer main break that Treasurer Johnson inspected for us throughout the process. It was right in front of his house. And I believe that has been dug up a second time, or it's about to be dug up. They've
already done it up the second time.
Basically what happened there is those are PVC pipes. They're schedule pipes, so you cannot hook a welder up to them like you can a water pipe, a metal water pipe, to thaw them. They either have to be dug or chemically done. You can't even really steam some of them because we have grinder pumps, and those grinder pumps all have check valves in them, so steam will only get to the check valve and it closes it. So we've been treating those chemically with a system-friendly chemical that we got actually found in Canada that they've been using up there for the very, very serious freeze-ups that they've been having this winter. Entire communities are frozen solid. They have to haul water in. But we've been using that, and it's been working fairly well. You put it right in the grinder pump, and it then filters out through the connector. And that's what's freezing for us, is not the main. It's the individual connections from the grinder pump. If there's not activity at the household, basically the water that's in the pipe freezes. They're only 2-inch pipes. The problem with the main that was in front of Treasurer Johnson's house is that the joint failed where the two pipes were put together, and when we repaired it, we ran into the same issue that we did with the roof at the Public Works facility. If you remember, it has to be above 10 degrees and not wet, basically, for the adhesive to work. Well, it was wet, but they used the adhesive anyway, and we had to go back in and put a different adhesive on it, but they needed to get that fixed so it could be in use in the meantime. What we're really concerned about is, as everybody else is as the temperature starts to warm up, that's when you really run into the danger of broken pipes, because the earth starts to move. The ground, the frost coming out of the ground makes the earth actually move, and that's what puts the fracturing pressure on pipes. So that season is yet to be here, but we think we have a pretty good jump on it. We are monitoring all of the costs. So we're monitoring the overtime, and when you see the overtime report for this last pay period in your next packet, be sitting down when you read it. So we are monitoring that, and we are looking to recover that through an emergency declaration. We are not as bad off as, for instance, the city of Ishpeming you saw yesterday. They're hiring outside contractors because their staff can't handle it anymore. So it's fairly serious, and it's going to tax the budgets significantly, and not so bad for us, but for other communities will suffer greatly financially as a result of this weather.
Ernie, question for Randy?
Yes, I have a number of them here. Last meeting we were talking about the equipment for cleaning the sidewalks and that.
Yes.
And that we're due in by the 15th.
15th. I received two proposals in that we're analyzing right now, and the reason I go for requests for proposals as opposed to bids is because then you can negotiate, basically. And what we're looking for vehicles, 2 3/4-ton pickups. So we will now be negotiating with the two dealers that submitted proposals about what they have on hand as opposed to what they might order, and dovetail on some other orders if there are large corporate orders that are going in, dovetail on that.
Okay, another one, some of the information that we get, one of them was on the SAW grant application.
Mm-hmm.
We did not get any dollars in the first time around.
No, we did not.
And the way I read it is that the next dollars will go on the sequence that's listed. And I went through and counted, I got up to over 100 people ahead of us, so we may not see it for a year or so in that too.
Right, the SAW stands for Soil and Water Conservation Grants, and those come out, and it's much like Mike was talking about with the MNRTF grants. You may not get on the first time or the second time, but basically as you refine your proposals, basically, and you accrue points, you're on again. So we're pursuing the SAW grants. We're also pursuing some of the SRF grants that are coming up. We're starting to put together proposals for potentially water and sewer projects going forward. As I mentioned just earlier, we will be redoing Ontario as the Road Commission is redoing Ontario. We'll be looking at the infrastructure, the water and sewer lines that are under Ontario, and possibly looking for a grant to replace those, upgrade those, which we always do when we're working on roads.
Okay, another one, I saw in the bills and that, and then I saw the company come in for additional tables and chairs in our community room. Can you give us an update? Why are we moving with more?
Well, we ran almost short in the last rental, so we picked up 4 more tables and 16 more chairs to accommodate that. What we are seeing happen basically is on some of the events that are going on there, the family events in particular, they're turning into potluck type things, and several of the tables are being taken to hold fairly large quantities of different types of food. So, so they're using them basically for other than seating. So we picked up some extra tables just to accommodate that.
Okay, another item is landlines. I don't think we can do anything about it, but is there any while contacting the governor and say, we are not for it up here because of the problems we're gonna have.
Well, I've been monitoring it, and I think you're going to see Michigan Municipal League, Michigan Association of Counties, MTA, all will probably chime in on this because our operation, like most governmental operations, rely on landlines for our main telephone contacts. Most people are going to cell phones. If you took a poll in here, almost everybody in here probably has a cell phone and doesn't have a landline any longer. But from a business standpoint, from an operational and organizational standpoint, most still rely on hardwired systems as opposed to non. So I think that's going to be a significant event. It's interesting that this is being pushed by the Chamber of Commerce, which represents businesses generally, and I don't understand where it's coming from, other than pure profit for some companies.
Well, the next thing on the community room, in reading different literature lately in that, they talk about community rooms in different municipalities and that. And they're looking at using it for the community. And one of the items was something for kids. And I got thinking, how about an art fair, one-day art fair for the kids? But here again, you have to have someone that's going to sponsor it and oversee it and that. But looking at utilizing that to bring them in to see what's here and to get them into the community and that too. So, and it could be on an events committee could get involved with that too. Who knows?
Well, and the library could as well. The library does quite a large number of programs geared towards children, so this would be a good location for that. And we're starting to get a lot of variety in the types of uses. You saw tonight there was a group that was using it this evening, and then we have, I believe it's next week, we have three consecutive nights that another group is going to be using it. So it's starting to get pretty heavy use. Yeah, a lot of variation. I mean, there are a wide variety of uses that the room could be used for.
Okay, another one is not really for the manager, but just information on credit cards. We've talked about it before, and that it looks like probably sometime in April it will be available. They're looking at bringing up the equipment in the next couple of weeks for that at the end, and then training and that. So it'll be available. We probably won't be able to make a big notice yet until May, but we're moving in that direction in that.
Well, and I guess one thing along that line, the credit cards that we're going to be using will be secured cards. So the events that have happened recently at Target and at Econo and several other places are less likely to occur. This is more of a targeted use, specific use for us. So, but not to say that it couldn't be hacked. I mean, they're getting hacked every day, and we'll see where they go.
But in that same line, all the responsibility and financial responsibility goes back to the company.
Absolutely.
Nothing in the township and that.
No.
So we don't have any of that responsibility.
No, all we're doing is we're operating as a conduit.
Right. I think the last thing, I would like to thank the Public Works personnel for the hours that they put in, probably in front of my house and that. 2 full days and that, and the equipment and that, and so both days happened to be fairly nice. That's the only good thing about it, and that it wasn't bitterly cold, it wasn't a lot of snow or anything else, and that they were able to operate. I can't say an ideal temperature, but ideal compared to what we have had in the past.
Well, they've been putting in a lot of time, and this is one of the things that that doesn't get recognized very often with these folks, as they are subject to 24-hour calls 7 days a week, and they're responding to when we get the calls of freezes. People get home, find their lines are frozen, and call. They're out to thaw them and take care of it.
One last thing is that in the latest MTA Township Focus, there was an article on the Robinson Scholarship available to students in our township. I wonder if we can't put something like this on our website to let
Sure.
the word out there, so our students within our township can have the opportunity to apply for it and that too. So,
Certainly, we can put that up on the website and on the Facebook page.
so there's some things coming up from the academy too. I think you may want to take a look at, everybody, see what's going to be beneficial in that.
Is that it?
I quit. How about that?
Other questions for Manager Gerard? Pete?
I'll be quick because Ernie used my 3 minutes up already. So. New equipment with a lot of different townships and cities, their equipment are failing. How are we doing? Should we be looking ahead for some different stuff? Because I know ours is kind of old.
Well, we are. It's well maintained. And a lot of the issue that that some of the communities are falling into now is that their equipment hasn't been maintained. That they've had it in storage for quite some time, and now that they need it, it's not ready to go. But we're always looking at replacing equipment as it starts to wear out. We do that through the bid process. This has been a much more lengthy period of time than what typically has happened. And we're setting records all the time in terms of number of days below zero, number of days below freezing, and number of days with snow. Even though our accumulation for the year isn't out of the ordinary, we never had a thaw. And that's putting a tax on a lot of structures and a lot of other pieces of equipment that we never had the break in snow this year. It's been continuous since November. So watch your roofs. We're seeing a lot of structures starting to be impacted by the weight. I don't know if any of you noticed, but this morning when I was on my morning run, I came past the harbor and noticed that the city has now ribboned off and condemned the harbor master building down in the harbor. And if you look at it, it is tilting fairly dramatically towards the lake. So it's being undercut as well. So those things are starting to happen just because of the length of impact.
Another one, I got a request, since the city might get some money from the mines to help with their roads, they're wondering if we could do something about Muskie and Fair, maybe in your communications with the city, that, we've done a great job on Warner and different, on Fair Avenue, but when you go into the city, that road right there, into McClellan to, I'd say by Ernie's house,
Mm-hmm.
they're getting bad, and then over by Muskie, but people don't realize that's not our road. So,
Well, yeah, those are two that are pretty well noted because of the connections to the township. I can say that this morning the representative from the city did propose that section of Fair be repaired, and the road commission took a position that until the city addresses whether or not or where they're going to have trucking allowed in the city, the road commission is not going to put money into what could be something other than a truck route. They're limited basically with this funding that they have available to be all-season roads and all-use roads.
they didn't say nothing about Muskie down on the bottom of Warner.
Nobody has said anything about that as yet.
Residents have.
Yeah, basically, Warner, when you're going east out of the township on Warner, when you make that curve, you're on City Street, and that's Meeske, and it's in pretty bad shape. But I have not seen anything of it being looked at to be repaired.
All right. Thank you.
That it? Is that it? This brings us up to public comment. Those members of the public wishing to address the board may do so at this time. If you keep your comments less than 3 minutes, there's a bonus.
Absolutely. Dave Wigan, 350 Brookton Road. First, I'd like to thank the board for the action they took on the resolutions for the grants tonight. And then second, I'd like to bring up some road committee issues. When we presented our recommendation to the board on November 19th, it came with a request by the board that we have some information available for them in their first meeting in April. The road committee has put together a presentation. It's going to take about 15 minutes. If you would like to put us into your agenda for the first meeting in April, we'd like to deliver it then, and as much as the board is pretty much up to speed on what we're trying to do with the roads, it starts the whole information process out to the public so they know what we're trying to do and where the money's coming from and all that. So we'd like to get penciled in for the first meeting in April for about 15 minutes worth of presentation.
Done.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else wishing to address the board? Going once, going twice. We'll close public comment. Move to additional comments from board members. Anyone wish to make comment may do so at this time. Lynn?
A couple things. Get the specs on. Just as an informational piece, there's the Marquette County Road Commission is going up to Big Bay Thursday night at 7 to do a 70% report on the progress of figuring out what they're going to do with 510 AAA. And you probably got, or I hope you did, in your mailboxes that I presented to the Planning Commission last week, a report on the tourism conference I went to down in Traverse City a couple weeks ago. And it It just details a few things that I did it as a hotelier rather than a board member, but I picked up things for the Business Association, the Convention and Visitors Bureau. It was very well-rounded. It might be something that Marquette Township, whether it's staff or board, might want to consider attending. It's only Sunday to Tuesday. But it does address tourism in general. There were excellent breakout sessions on, and I brought the flyer, not as many as what we attend with MTA by any means, but I definitely went to the Michigan's Recreation Trails, and I brought the rec committee, the new plan from the DNR, so you guys can have that. I just grabbed one. It talks about downtown development. There was a special speaker on that. I didn't go to that one. It was the same time as the trails. There was a lot of international stuff. We had an international speaker that talked about tourism and dollars and how to promote your community, how to promote the restaurants and the hotels and the lodges and the bed and breakfasts, and what to do in your community, how to work with other counties, and whether you want to work as multiple counties. One of the speakers has branched into her own business of linking communities or linking counties to get together on a central theme, which I thought was a little bit too much, and I talked to the CVB director. We didn't really see it working too much in Marquette County or in the UP, but it may. I mean, some of the bigger communities are doing that. And what they do is form a separate board, if you will, to discuss the whole region. And it's rather comprehensive, but you bring this person in, and it's a 6-month study and $35,000 minimum, and the stakeholders can be businesses and schools, and it shows you how in your area to develop as a whole community. And each, say my business would contribute, and MAPS would contribute, and the bus company would contribute, and anybody. And they'd all become members of this board. It's a really different concept, and they're doing it all over the world, apparently. I didn't know anything about it. But it's not just our little communities, it's international. Some MGM resorts and those kinds of places came in and spoke. I didn't get to any of theirs because I went to a different one. Lots of marketing to China and Canada. Now, I notice as my business owner, we have a lot of Canadians. My husband and I both have ties to Canada in our family, so we thought it appropriate to put out Canadian flag. So in that vein, we get a lot of Canadian customers, and they said that they're going to become more and more tourist-oriented because they have money to spend, the Chinese and the Canadians, which I thought was interesting. And the Tourism Council is going to be tapping more into the United Kingdom and Germany. They see them having thousands of dollars to spend and to come. So whatever we can do for our trails or our anything, tourism, our hotels, our restaurants, any of our attractions, our the DNR, our parks and everything, is just going to be one more reason for them to come to Marquette, which I thought was pretty amazing. Let's see what else they talked about. Culinary. They did 2 or 3 things on restaurants and stuff. But I thought that was kind of interesting. And just some quick statistics. Snowmobile tourists generate $560 million in Michigan annually. $400 million on equipment and $160 million on trips, generating 3,800 jobs. And in 2013, 132,000 permits for snowmobiles were issued, 132,777. ATVs aren't quite as much. They have 30 million annually in Michigan, 212 on equipment and 82 on trips, generating 800 jobs. 206,000 permits were issued in 2013 for ATVs. Non-motorized is not as trackable, but it's been determined that 80% are local who use non-motorized venues, and only 20% are tourists, which I thought was kind of interesting. The average age for a Michigander bike tour participant is 45 years old and has an income of $90,000. So there was just some kind of interesting little things, but we might want to consider sending somebody. I don't know that I'll go again. It moves around. It has the same format as MTA, and it'll be in Grand Rapids next year too. It's usually the second weekend in March, I think. So it's just a few weeks after MTA. But it's not nearly as expensive either. It's like $300 for the conference, and like I said, it's only 2 nights, but something to consider. I think that's all I had. Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else? Board member comment? Clerk Patari?
Yeah, since this is an election year, midterm elections, I do have some important dates for everyone, and they will be here before you know it. So I will start with them. Anyone interested in running for county commissioner, they have to be, if they're going to be a Democrat or Republican, they have to be filed by April 22nd by 4 o'clock. If you are going to run as an independent, you don't have to file until July 22nd. And for the August primary, which is August 5th, your last day to register to vote is July 7th. And for the November 4th state general election, your last day to register to vote is October 6th. So those are a few important dates coming up. And if anyone has any questions on petitions or any of that, they can come and see me here.
Thanks, Randy. Pete, any comments?
No comment.
My last one is just a reminder again that we have some volunteer positions available here in the township. If you come in, you can go online and get an application, download it, stop in and pick one up. Shoot us an email and we'll shoot one off to you, scan it in and shoot it to you if we have to. Just remember that good government is not a spectator sport. You've got to jump in. We've got some great volunteer opportunities. We'd love to tap into your time and talents. It doesn't have to be a big commitment. It can be whatever you can afford to give. That having been said, thanks for all your hard work.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? This meeting is adjourned.
9:04 p.m.